Speaking of up-and-comers, you had put this one on my radar. You had said it's a two-parter that came out to
Yeah.
Apple TV Plus. I got to
Yeah.
see the first part,
Cool.
and damn it, it's pretty strong. I want to see the second part. Steve Martin, a documentary in two pieces, and rightfully so. We always talk about when it should be split. It sounds like this one was rightfully split going through his
Yeah.
life.
They've given a compelling reason to split it as well, because that entire first part that you watched is just sort of chronicling his early life into his stand-up
nothing.
career.
Yeah.
Really, yeah. He's an iconic stand-up comedian, just really breaking the form in a lot of ways.
What's the last one you showed me? Do you remember?
What 30
on
Rock
Max?
or something?
No, the Max one on Albert Brooks.
Yeah, Albert Brooks. Yes.
Another person where I know Steve, I know that man from their movies.
Right,
I feel
right.
like it's the Richard Pryors, the Eddie Murphys that I know before they became big actors. I know their stand-up.
Mm-hmm.
I have such a blind spot for Steve, Albert. I guess a lot of the older white dudes, and hearing just like the making of and how he became there, how they stole, fascinates me, bro. It just fascinates me to know. Continue.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's just a really great profile of how he sort of became the comedian he is, because what's interesting about Steve Martin, what I've always found fascinating about him, is he's the most highbrow, lowbrow comedian there is, right? Like he is a really smart guy who went to college to get a philosophy degree, who has a vast collection of paintings and is really well known in the art world for his taste and intellect. But
He has 12
he
kids.
likes to get on stage and do funny dances and wear an arrow over his head, you know? Like it's that mix of like intellectual prowess and just this really subversive quality that I think makes him really interesting. And he's just so silly, like supremely silly on stage.
Yeah. I did not know about the balloon hat being like that.
Yeah. I
That
mean,
they all came in with it. That's crazy.
right. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
he was one of the first stand-up comedians who was maybe the first stand-up comedian who was like selling out arenas, which is kind of like the bar we talk about now for iconic comedians.
Yeah, they said they pressed the vinyl for his the small one, and that was the first to cross a mill. I didn't know,
the first platinum
dude. I feel
comedy
like-
album.
I feel like Pharrell in the studio with Ye. I didn't know. I didn't know. If not for him, you don't have this comedy selling of albums, dude. Crazy stuff. Yeah.
And it's also just, it's got this really timeless quality to it too, because it is like it's silly, it's sort of visceral, like it's just kind of being fun. He talks about how his goal in stand-up was not to do like set up punchline, but try to get the type of laughter you get when you're just being fun around your friends. And it makes so much sense seeing the type of performer he is. So I thought it was a really, really incredible just analysis, compilation, dive into like why he became Steve Martin.
I had heard that punchline thing and I got mad for a little bit. I was like, what's wrong with punchlines? Then he kind of describes it to you. He's breaking down that, I don't get high, I get small. You're like, what the heck's going on? But it's like the third joke in when you're like, got it, you created the world. Now we're in this world. How crazy can you get within the world? Now you're driving small. Understood completely. And it's like that way of thinking is, I think, what also made him so successful as an actor. I mean, he was just bound to blow up in that sense. And it's also honest. It's a very honest documentary, which is one of the biggest things that I look for in these, because he has a lot to do with this, I want to say. I know it's Morgan Neville, who I think is a good documentarian, but it does
it's definitely like done with him as almost a co-author, Steve.
Yeah. But he was still willing to say true things about himself. The idea of him taking other people's jokes until he realized, okay, now I got to do it on my own way. Now they're taking my jokes. I thought that was very smart and honest, because even the Cheech and Chong one, they felt the need to be honest now, because you can't hide it nowadays, right?
Yeah. Well, we often talk about how we don't love when these documentaries feel like they're promotional pieces, right? Because so many
cut out stuff. Yeah.
artists or icons or whatever want some sort of producerial say over the documentary about them. But I think we might need to make an exception for dudes who are just too old to give a fuck anymore.
Thank you. Honestly, like the worst case is that they're pulling a Mattel, right? Hey, put
Yeah.
all my skeletons out there. And if you end up with a pretty good movie, you ended up with a pretty good movie, right? In both of these cases, like I'm mentioning, South by had the Cheech and Chong one, and with him, to be willing to say that that's what they did, I think it's a very honest thing, because today, in any medium, from stand-up to doing podcasting to anything else, you're not getting away with it the way they were back then. You at least had a template. And I love that he described that. I couldn't have been writing my jokes and doing, like, I used a script to get ready in public. Nowadays, you got to do the editing, the writing, the everything yourself. And if you miss one thing, oh, is that AI? They're coming down with you.
Yeah.
They're coming down on you. And I don't know. I like that process of showing you how the old guard used to be and how it is now. So
Definitely.
good recommendation, Steve
Yeah.
Martin. Got to finish the second part over here, but fascinating stuff.
If you liked all that about it, I think you'll like the second part as well, because the second part is much more of a focus on his life in movies, as well as his life today, and sort of like where the sort of late career renaissance that he's been having, particularly as a partner with Martin Short. They both have Only Murders in the Building together, and they do comedy tours together. But that honesty is really like prevalent in the second half, because as iconic as Steve Martin is, like he doesn't exactly have like an amazing track record in film. He's got a few like iconic films on there. I love The Jerk. I love Father of the Bride, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. But he's got a lot of he's got a lot of misses in there as well. Things that were either critical or commercial failures. And he has a willingness to sort of look back on how they were received with honesty. So I think you like that second part of the documentary as well. Definitely one of the standout profile docs we've had so far this year.
The first part was ending and he already had white hair. I'm like,
Martin Short has a joke in the second one where he says, it's something like, you look good for 70, which is easy to say because you've looked 70 since you were 30.
Someone had said about Martin Short, he's always got one on him. Mm-hmm. He's fine. He's just waiting for someone to say something.
Waiting to fire off from the hip.
Crazy stuff. All right, that's a good one right there. Steve, 2-part series, rightfully so, over on Apple TV Plus, adding to their collection.